When my family shut me out in my darkest hour, I never expected their heart-wrenching return. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt heavy, thick with impending doom. My heart pounded like a drum, louder than my own thoughts, as I stood at the threshold of despair. The hum of whispered judgment surrounded me. I could feel their gazes burning holes in my skin. They had given up on me, crushed me. The weight of loneliness pressed against my chest. My closest friends, my family, they were all gone. The silence felt deafening, pierced only by the distant sound of laughter from families I once belonged to. A million memories screamed at me from the walls, the framed photos of us together, smiling and vibrant. Now faded treasures locked away in a past that felt like a cruel joke. I reached out, wanting to grasp those moments, but all I felt was emptiness. My brother Jake had been my anchor. We shared everything, our dreams, our fears. But in an instant, he turned away, leaving me drowning in an ocean of isolation. I could still hear the words he spat out that day: "You've embarrassed us too much." The betrayal twisted my insides like a knife, each turn deeper than the last. Then there was Mom. Her eyes, once warm, now held a chilling vacancy. She turned her back on me when I needed her most. "We can't support this," she said, her voice a fragile whisper that broke like glass against my reality. The tightening knot in my throat told me I couldn't breathe, not with the burden of their judgment weighing me down. Days turned into nights, the darkness closing in around me, every heartbeat echoing the loneliness I felt. I wandered through empty streets, the cold night air biting at my skin. I ached for connection, for that moment of embrace, but every corner reminded me of the distance that had grown between us. They were out there, and I was stuck here, a ghost in my own life. Then, just when I thought I was losing my grip, a flicker of something unusual began to stir. Strange occurrences danced around my phone calls that didn't connect, shadows that flickered at the edge of my vision. I felt a chill dance down my spine as if someone was watching me, waiting for the right moment. My gut twisted, the unease settling deep. And it happened. One evening, I received a cryptic message from an unknown number, a mere flicker of hope. "We need to talk." My heart raced. Was this my family returning? Or was it a cruel trick? The message sent tremors of anticipation through me, but the fear of rejection gripped me tighter. As I stood at that precipice of hope and despair, I realized I couldn't let go. What did they want from me now? Why choose this moment to return? A lump formed in my throat as I stared at the screen, waiting for that answer. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In the muted glow of my phone, the message lay like a stone on my chest, heavy and foreboding. "We need to talk." Was it Jake? Mom? My heart thudded like a winded drum, echoing the whirlwind of feelings whirling through me. I blinked, willing the words to transform into something tangible, something reassuring. But all I could see were regrets and unanswered questions. I sat in my dimly lit room, shadows embracing me like old friends. Without packing even a semblance of warmth, I stepped outside, the night air crisp against my flushed skin. Each step felt like a delicate dance on a tightrope of hope and despair. The streets were largely empty, a canvas both familiar and foreign, as the echoes of laughter from earlier days drifted into my ears, tauntingly sweet. Eventually, I found myself at the old cafe, the one just a block away from my childhood home. I hadn't been there since the fallout, yet the aroma of fresh coffee and warm pastries wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I spotted an old acquaintance, Lucy, sitting at a corner table, her brow furrowed in concentration over a thick book. She looked up, her expression morphing from surprise to concern as she noticed me. "Hey, "Long time no see," she said softly, her voice laced with warmth. It was as though a supplicant had brought me a fragile peace offering in my storm of emotions. "Yeah," I replied, trying to muster a smile, but it felt foreign on my lips. "I've been busy." She motioned for me to join, sensing the heaviness that hovered in my aura. As I sank into the chair across from hers, I could feel a part of me lighten, albeit just a fraction. "What are you reading?" I asked, my voice wavering slightly, the question a lifeline to tether myself in this moment. "Just a fantasy novel," she replied, a smile creeping onto her face. "But it's been grounding me. Books can really save you when everything else feels lost. You know?" Something in her eyes glimmered a silent understanding that flickered with a pulse of long-lost camaraderie. "Yeah, I get that." I leaned in, eager to absorb her positivity. For a brief moment, the world outside fatted me family. My heartache, all fell away, leaving just the sanctuary of shared silence and mutual understanding. But that ephemeral peace shattered like glass when my phone buzzed, the unknown number lighting up my screen once again. My stomach flipped, anxiety crashing over me. I stared at it, paralyzed, half inclined to answer, half fearing the fallout. I excused myself and stepped outside, the cool air stinging my cheeks. With trembling fingers, I accepted the call. "Hello?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. "There you are," a deep voice rumbled through the receiver. It was neither Mom nor Jake. "We need to meet." Shock washed over me, a tidal wave of confusion and fear. "Who is this? What do you want?" I demanded, my heart pounding loudly in my ears. "I am someone who knows what's happening to your family. You need to listen. There's something you need to understand." The voice replied, low and urgent. A chill snaked down my spine. "Why should I trust you?" "Because if you don't," he continued, "you may lose what's left of them permanently." A cacophony of emotions surged through me: fear, dread, and a flicker of rage. "What do you mean?" But before he could respond, the call disconnected, leaving only silence and an echo of uncertainty where answers should be. I collapsed onto the sidewalk, my back against the cold, unyielding ground. My breath hitched in my throat as the distance between me and my family felt infinitely greater. They were still trapped in some unseen snare, and I felt it tightening around me as well, squeezing everything I loved and knew into a claustrophobic space from which I could not escape. And now the stranger, with his ominous warning, threatened to plunge me deeper into that chasm of uncertainty. Sitting there under the pale glow of the street lamp, shaking off the residue of confusion, I wiped my eyes and looked back at the cafe. Lucy had been watching, concern stitched into her expression, but her comforting presence felt far away. In that moment, I understood the next steps I took could lead me closer to understanding the rift in my family or deeper into the shadows. As I pushed myself to stand, I wasn't sure whether I would truly be able to bridge the distance or if I was destined to fall endlessly into the dark. All I knew was that an unsettling urgency tugged at my insides, compelling me to act. And then, I received another message, instantly dampening my fragile courage. "Come home. We're waiting." The air in my lungs felt heavy as I reread the message, each word pressing down like a weight I couldn't bear. "Come home. We're waiting." It was vague, yet the command was as sharp as a blade, twisting in my gut. There was no question of rejecting the call to return. I needed to face whatever awaited me, even if it felt more like a summons to a courtroom than a comforting invitation to family. Walking back towards my childhood home was like retracing an old path laden with memories, some sweet and others bitter. With each step, flashes of laughter and arguments spiraled through my thoughts, as if my mind was overlaid with a sepia filter, reminiscent of an era I so desperately missed. But with every memory that twinkled, there was a deeper shadow lurking at the edges, hinting at the dread of returning to a place that felt alien now. As I approached the front door, I paused, heart racing. The house loomed before me, still adorned with its ivy-clad facade that felt like it belonged in storybooks. But I knew better. Beneath its picturesque exterior lay the remnants of fragile ties and aching silence. Gathering my courage, I knocked, the sound echoing hollowly in the evening air. The door creaked open, revealing my transformed family faces once familiar now seemed etched with lines of fatigue and sorrow. Mom's eyes widened in surprise, then melted into a mix of relief and something I couldn't quite identify. Jake stood slightly behind her, shoulders hunched, a strange shuffle in his demeanor echoing what I felt inside. "Hey," I said, attempting to steady my voice, but it felt like a feeble attempt to anchor myself in a storm. "Hi." Mom responded, her smile tinged with uncertainty. "We didn't know if you were coming." I stepped inside, the scent of home wafting around me, evoking fragments of a simpler time. My heart ached at the sight of the family photos lining the hallway, capturing moments of joy juxtaposed against the heaviness now saturating the air. Silently, we navigated the familiar chaos of the living room, each unspoken word clinging to the stillness like dust motes in the afternoon sun. "It's been a while," I offered, shifting from one foot to the other. Jake aligned himself on the couch, eyes downcast, though I could feel the weight of his gaze lingering over me. "Have you been?" he asked, barely lifting his head. A torrent of feelings washed over me: grief, anger, longing clawing at my insides. I hesitated, fighting to articulate the chaos reverberating in me. "You know it hasn't been easy." Mom stepped closer then, hesitation woven into her every action. "We've all been feeling it, honey." We thought her voice trailed off, vulnerability entwined with the cool air of the room. "We just didn't want to burden you." The silence hung heavily, the air thickened by complexity and misunderstanding, a recognition that none of us had been truly communicating. "But I want to be part of this," I implored, desperate for connection. "I don't understand why it felt like you all shut me out." Jake finally looked up, his expression breaking. "We didn't know how to cope with everything. Either. We were all just lost." Mom inhaled sharply, almost as if the revelation pressed against her chest. "Please, let's try to talk about it. Open up. We owe it to each other," she urged. Yet as my heart surged with the spark of hope, the phone buzzed on the coffee table, disrupting the fragile moment. I grabbed it before I even registered whose name it was. "It's him," I whispered, already trembling at the reality that this newcomer could spill secrets that felt dangerously close to shattering whatever reconstruction was attempting to take place. Jake glanced at me, confused. "Who?" I hesitated, the struggle between truth and protection weighing heavily in my mind. "A stranger, someone who says they know what happened to us." All eyes were upon me, the atmosphere crackling with the unspoken expectation of understanding, and dread curtained the path before me. "You should answer it," Mom urged, concern threading her voice. The moment felt infinite, my finger hovering over the screen, a decision that could unravel everything. I took a breath, realizing the truth. I couldn't hide or shrink away anymore. Meeting the challenge head-on might just be the first step in breathing life back into this fractured family. As I pressed accept, the world around me faded, leaving only the darkness whirling on the other side of the line. A voice, stark and cool as winter's grasp, slid into my ear. "You've made a mistake by coming home. Now the clock is ticking." My breath caught in my throat, heart slamming against my ribs, every beat echoing a reality that was becoming too large to ignore. The conversation paused, leaving only the tension hanging like a taut bowstring, instable, yet full of promise for an impending release. The revelation loomed over us like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, foreboding yet charged with potential. And I realized this moment whispered of decisions that may not just fracture our family further, but bind us together in ways we couldn't yet comprehend. The voice on the other end felt like ice slicing through the warmth of my family reunion. "What do you mean, the clock is ticking?" I managed to croak out, my pulse racing as anxiety surged through me. The reality of our fragile reunion darkened further, and I could sense my parents' eyes on me, a tangled web of concern and confusion tightening around the room. "Let's just say, every secret you uncover leads to another, and some of those secrets don't want to stay buried." The voice laughed softly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine, echoing with a cruel familiarity, as if it had been lurking just beneath the surface of our lives. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steadying in determination. I needed clarity, though as I searched for it against the encroaching shadows, dread threatened to drown me. Someone who knows more about your family's past than you do. Maybe more than your parents care to share. The line clicked and hummed ominously, then dropped silent, leaving my heart pounding as I processed the implications. I blinked in bewilderment, dragging my gaze towards my family. Mom's face had gone pale, the color draining as though she'd seen a ghost. Jake, still seated, had clenched his fists, the muscle in his jaw twitching as he wrestled with his own turmoil. "What did they say?" he pressed, his voice barely above a whisper. "That they know something that's tied to us," I replied, gnawing my lower lip as I fought the gnawing anxiety. "About why we fell apart." Mom wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture of retreat that caused my heart to ache. "Some things are better left unsaid," she finally said, her voice thick with unease. "I thought we'd moved on, that we could heal together. Be why ignoring what happened?" I challenged, my frustration spilling over. "You didn't tell me anything, Mom. You let me go through this alone." Jake shifted on the couch, suddenly upset. "We were all hurting. What do you want from us?" His anger bubbled over, his own struggles blinking through. I saw it for what it was: pain, grief, and the weight of a family fractured by silence and secrets we weren't ready to confront. A soft ding broke through the moment, my phone lighting up again, casting an eerie glow in the dim room. My stomach dropped as I saw another familiar name flash across the screen: me uncle. Tom. Panic chased after my anger as I knew he'd avoid the topic of our family drama at all costs. "And oh, I don't think I can take a call right now," I muttered, shaking my head as Mom stepped forward, her fingers trembling as she reached for the phone. "Maybe we need to hear what he has to say," she suggested cautiously. The vulnerability she exuded hung in the air, fragile like gossamer. I hesitated, the fraught silence desperate for something to latch onto, someone to rescue us from the chaos we'd just opened. Before I could stop her, Mom answered, her voice a thin veneer that barely masked the tremor of fear beneath. "Tom, hello?" The room remained silent, yet every heartbeat rang loud in my ears. A conversation I couldn't hear unfolded, tension drawing taut between us. As I tried to discern facial expressions, Mom's brows slowly knitting together in worry, Jake biting at his fingernails, eyes darting. "What did he say?" I pressed, voice cracking as the moments stretched to a suffocating crawl. Finally, the weight of the uncertainty became unbearable, and I stepped closer. "Tom thinks we should go see him," Mom muttered, her voice shaking. He believes he knows who this person is. The one who called you." The news flashed like lightning across the depths of my heart, igniting a primitive surge of both fear and curiosity. But I stammered, "What does he know? How could he possibly have anything useful?" Mom lowered her gaze, fear passing over her features. "He thinks the truth lies somewhere in our past, maybe even about that night." The mention of that night enveloped us in a chilling silence, the very thing we always tiptoed around. It was a dark reminder of our shared fracture, the event we had never reconciled. "Mom, we can't go digging into that," Jake interjected, his voice trembling with the urgency of being trapped. "What if we unearth something that shouldn't be disturbed? What if it hurts us more?" A pang of panic throbbed in my chest, yet somewhere deep beneath the layers of fear was a glimmer of hope, the chance to piece together the fragments of our broken family, the opportunity to shed light on the shadows clouding us. "Jake, if we're going to heal, we have to face our past. What if this lost history we share is the key?" As I spoke the words, a moment of clarity shifted in the atmosphere. Something unlocked within me, a vision of our family gathering the scattered shards, over time healing the wounds we had let fester in silence. But as quickly as that thought bloomed, an unsettling truth clawed at me, whispering there may be parts of our history better left untouched. Just as I reached for my phone to make some call of my own, another message lit up the screen, a single phrase that froze my heart. "I'm closer than you think." The air thickened with its implications, my breath hitched in my throat, and the cracks began to widen around us, pulling every loose thread of this unraveling family further apart. The air crackled with tension, a palpable heaviness that seeped into the walls, as if the house itself held its breath. "What does that mean?" I whispered, glancing up at my mom and Jake, their faces shadowed with uncertainty. My heart raced, fueled by a cocktail of fear and an inexplicable desire for answers. The cryptic message held something sinister, yet it also held the possibility of uncovering the truth, the very truth we had dared not confront. Mom clutched the phone as if it were a lifeline, her knuckles white and frail. "Maybe it's just a prank," she finally said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her own doubts. Jake, still wound tight with anxiety, shook his head. "Pranks don't usually involve digging into our family's darkest secrets," he said bitterly, a bitterness that hinted at his own inner turmoil. I could see the weariness glazing over his eyes, the invisible weight of past burdens pressing down with all their might. "Can we think this through for a second?" I urged, my own voice rising with worry. "We can't just let this slip away, not when it's so close to our door." Mom's gaze flicked between us, searching for the courage to move forward. "What if this is exactly what we need? Not just to understand the past, but to help us with our present. Or what if it tears us apart completely?" Jake countered, his fists clenched tighter, as if he would bleed if he held on too hard. Before I could respond, an unexpected perspective flowed into the room. My phone chimed again, and this time the name was one I hadn't seen in years. "Me old friend. Lily." "Can't talk right now," I murmured, dismissing the thought of rekindling friendships from simpler times, feeling that sinking sense of isolation closing in. But then, curiosity flicked through me. I tapped open the message. "I'm here for you. Always have been. Let me know if you need to talk." A swell of warmth washed over me, one that momentarily softened the jagged edges of our chaos. In the midst of our unraveling, there was a reminder of kindness, of connection, waiting patiently on the periphery. "Maybe we should talk to someone outside of this," I suggested tentatively, the thought solidifying in my mind. "Someone who can give us perspective. Someone who's not attached to our past." Mom shook her head slowly, unsure, her face pinching with doubt. "Do we trust anyone with this? It's not just family talking about secrets that could ruin everything." "Maybe that's exactly what we need," I shot back, desperation creeping into my voice. "The voices of those who see us as we are, not as we were." But Jake muttered something under his breath, something dark that felt like a bolt of ice cracking through my already heavy heart. I caught the words "never get the truth," and it gnawed at me, an angry beast stirring a distant ache I recognized too well. Mom stepped closer to Jake. "This is evaluation time, and we can't be afraid to face the truth," she said, her voice more solid, perhaps for her own resolution rather than ours. "Tom might be right. Maybe we can find a way forward, or at least some sense of understanding." The tension sank low, digging deeper into the hard surface of our realities. The ground beneath us felt unstable, a chasm threatening to swallow us whole as countless questions drifted through the charged silence. "What if we faced this together?" I asked softly, the plea shaking through me like a fragile promise, a fragile thread of hope. "What if this is our moment to decide who we want to be as a family?" The air shifted, as fresh possibilities flitted amongst our despair. Our eyes met, and the shared fear mingled with silver-laced courage igniting in the room. But the lingering shadow of that mysterious threat loomed, waiting, silently mocking us. Then, another message flashed, jolting me back to a more tangible reality. This time, a single photo, a grainy image of an old house, something I instantly recognized. Our family home, the one we'd left behind after that night. My breath hitched as a wave of panic washed over me. "Where did you get this?" I texted back, my fingers trembling. "Look." Closer came the reply. "Your family isn't the only one with secrets." An unshakable chill trickled down my spine, and my mind raced. What did this mean? Who had sent this? There was an undeniable sense that the limits of our fragile union were about to be pushed beyond belief. As I looked up at my parents, the resolve in their eyes brightened with uncertainty. I could feel the ground beneath us shifting, anticipation wrapping around each of us like a thick fog. The pieces of our family puzzle seemed poised to unravel just as much as they were destined to come together if we were willing to engage in the mess of it all. With the message still burning in my thoughts, I whispered my fears aloud, each word sealing a fundamental truth that had been masked by our family's silence. We're standing on a precipice, aren't we? One wrong step but the realization lingered unspoken, as the dying light of day filtered through the window, casting long shadows on our delicate assembly. The past was a ticking clock, and a sound deep within urged me to take a step forward. Would it lead us toward light or consume us in darkness? As the walls around us began to resonate, harmonizing our fears and hopes into a song of reckoning, I knew we were at the edge of a truth we might not be ready to face. As dawn broke, the light spilled through the narrow window, spilling soft hues across the floorboards. Yet the warmth it promised felt distant and cold within the confines of our fragile reunion. I lay wide awake, staring at the insipid ceiling, feeling as if every moment ticked away some piece of my strength. The house was a labyrinth of secrets, each corner shadowed with a tension I couldn't fully name, an ache that resided deep in the fabric of our home. Mom and Jake were quiet, perhaps caught in their own storms, battles waged beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confessions to come, wondering how many other secrets lay in wait, hidden in our collective silence. Just then, my phone chimed again, slicing through the stillness like a whisper of hope. It was Lily again. "Hey, I'm thinking of you. Would you like to talk?" I'm just a text away. Her willingness seemed like a lifeline tossed my way, but the weight of my family's turmoil felt too heavy to share. I hesitated before responding, caught in the tug-of-war between the hope for connection and the need to preserve the remnants of my family's unity. "Okay," I typed back, deciding to keep things light, focused on the now rather than the upheaval to come. "Can we meet for coffee later?" I hit send, and a moment later her reply popped up, "Absolutely. 3 p.m. 3 p.m. felt like an eternity away as I focused on the day ahead. I still wanted to voice my fears to Mom and Jake, to unravel the threads of tension binding us in a clasp so tight it threatened to snap. But every time I opened my mouth to speak, fear clutched my throat, and questions seemed to die on my lips. We sat at the breakfast table, the silence stretching awkwardly between us, a stark contrast to the loud conversations I had once taken for granted. I sipped my coffee, eyes darting between Mom's downcast gaze and Jake's clenched jaw. The hunger for familial closeness burdened me like an anchor. "Did you both sleep?" I finally ventured, casting the question into the void that surrounded us. "Not really," Jake said, his voice barely a murmur, weighted with disbelief. Mom finally lifted her head, a flicker of something stirring in her eyes. "Maybe we need to talk about the photo," she suggested, her tone wavering between resolve and fear. Words jammed in my throat. "About our home, you mean? And everything that happened there?" A resigned nod from my mother urged the words out from their hiding place. "Yes. We can't let fear rule us anymore. We need to confront the past." "Like speaking to a ghost?" Jake muttered, the bitterness returning as he leaned back, attempting to distance himself. Mom let out a shaky breath, a tentative truce building in the air among us. "We can break this cycle. We can't keep letting the shadows tell our story." "But then what? What if we unravel everything?" Jake exclaimed, the frustration spilling over, resonating with a pain I knew he couldn't fully articulate. It felt like the walls of our home were closing in on us, the air thick with unexpressed complexities. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, a notification lighting up the screen. It was a group text from Lily accompanied by a shared location, a map pointing to the abandoned house that loomed in our nightmares. "Meet me here. I found something you need to see." Panic and curiosity clawed at my insides, churning in conflict. "To think we might need to go. I need answers." I cleared my throat, trying to keep the tremor from overwhelming my voice. "Lily found something related to that house." Jake's eyes sparked with a mix of fear and mischief. "You really think that's a good idea? She won't uncover any new secrets, trust me." But I felt the pull of unearthing truths that had long lingered beneath our family's facade. Perhaps their secrets held more weight than we could fathom. "If we don't go, we'll never know," I replied, the urgency rising within me. "Do you really think facing more ghosts is the way to salvage what remains?" Jake asked, frustration lacing his words. "I don't know. But what choice do we have?" I responded, the edge of desperation in my voice. Can't ignore this message, Jake. We can't go on like everything is fine. Mom glanced at both of us, the storm in her heart reflected in her eyes. Then let's go together. If this is our journey, we need to embrace it as a family. Whatever awaits after, well, face it as one. The weight of acknowledgement hung over us, a dense fog weaving in patterns of hope and trepidation. With heads bowed and hearts pounding, we agreed on a path forward cloaked in uncertainty as we prepared to leave. I caught Jake's steady gaze and felt the fracture of our earlier animosity beginning to close. For the first time, I sensed a breaking of barriers and acknowledgement of pain, peppered with burgeoning trust. Finally, just as we settled into our shared resolve, a notification flashed across my screen, again another message from Lily. This one, unlike the others, bore an unsettling tone. Please be careful. The truth isn't as it seems. There are things you don't know. My heart raced. The reveal of unwelcome shadows in the corners of my mind. Our family was about to tread territories murkier than any of us anticipated. The glimmer of hope tainted by an undercurrent of danger. I shared the message with Mom and Jake, and the air thickened once again, pressing against our hearts. Our resolve teetered on the brink of action and fear, a precariously delicate dance uniting us in the face of the unknown. What awaited us within the walls of that forgotten house? The truth shrouded in obfuscation beckoned. Yet as we prepared to step into the shadows of our past, one thing was clear. The answers we sought could change us forever. The engine of the car purred softly as we pulled away from the driveway, the familiar surroundings of our lives fading into the rearview mirror. My heart thudded erratically, caught between the weight of impending revelations and the fragile hope that this confrontation might mend the frayed connections among us. The abandoned house loomed ahead on the map, a silent guardian of secrets we had yet to unearth. The roads were surprisingly empty, as if the universe itself held its breath in anticipation of our journey. Jake sat in the back seat, his eyes glued to the passing landscape. He seemed distant again, wrestling with his own apprehensions. In the passenger seat, Mom clutched her purse tightly, her knuckles white, revealing the tension coiling within her. I could feel it too, a collective dread wrapping around us like a chokehold, blurring the lines between family love and the fear of pain. What if we don't like what we find? Jake finally broke the silence, his voice edged with uncertainty. We can't let fear dictate our steps anymore, Mom replied, her voice stronger than I felt. Facing the past may help us find a way forward. Her words seemed to act as a balm, if only temporarily, but I could see that leash of anxiety pulling tight within her. A thought crept into my mind. Unsettling and yet curious, could this uncovering of truths somehow lead to healing? Were the answers we sought worth the potential fragmentation of our fragile bond? As if sensing my internal turmoil, Mom turned to meet my gaze, her expression softening. Whatever happens, we're still family. That I took a deep breath, resonating with newfound courage. Yes, we will figure this out together. Traffic lights flickered like slow heartbeats. Each pause served as seconds to contemplate how our family had changed so drastically. I glanced at my phone again, hoping for a message from Lily, something reassuring, anything that would anchor us to some sense of control. But the screen remained devoid of new notifications, leaving me with only my racing thoughts. When we finally arrived, the house loomed in front of us like a ghostly figure against the hazy sky. Vines crawled along the exterior, a testament to years of neglect, and shattered windows stared back like vacant eyes. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn away, but we were committed now. As we stepped onto the crumbling path leading to the entrance, the air thickened, mixing the musty scent of decay with the dusty remnants of forgotten memories. Moments of laughter from our childhood echoed faintly in my mind, overshadowed by an oppressive sorrow that lingered like smoke. Are you sure about this? Jake asked, a familiar flicker of challenge in his voice. I have to know, I said, glancing at Mom. We all do. Without waiting for a reply, I reached forward and pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, the sorrowful sound reverberating within the darkness that lay beyond. We stepped inside, the air stale and heavy like unspoken words. My heart raced, every instinct telling me to turn back and yet pushing me forward. The living room was just as I remembered, dim, cobweb-laden, and weighed down with a silence that screamed of secrets. The snapshots of our lives hung crooked on the walls, pictures of what was once a home now transformed into a mausoleum of memories. "Let's split up," I suggested, my voice surprisingly steady. "We need to cover more ground." "Are you sure?" Jake asked again, his brows furrowing. Feels wrong." "We'll be right here. Every sound will reach us," I reassured him, but that reassurance felt thin even to me. Mom nodded, perhaps feeling a renewed sense of purpose, and in that moment, our usual barriers began to lower, chipping away at the bitterness and silence that had gripped us for so long as we separated. I wandered toward the kitchen, where shadows danced with the low light filtering through cracked windows. My stomach churned nervously as I rifled through dusty drawers, old plates, and utensils left untouched. Strange remnants resurfaced me: birthday candles, the half-broken clock that had once ticked proudly on the wall. But where were the memories that would explain the silence? Suddenly, a soft thud echoed behind me, sending a wave of anxiety surging through my veins. I turned sharply to find Mom peering into what used to be our family room, clutching a small leather-bound book. Her wide eyes were filled with a mix of fear and awe. "Mom, what did you find?" I called, stepping cautiously over the cracked tiles. This was Dad's," she said, her voice trembling as she opened it to reveal pages filled with soaring handwriting, every word etched with emotion and unvoiced regrets. The moment felt electric, charged with revelations yet tangled in an intricate web of understanding. I approached her, nervous energy making my hands shake slightly. "Can I see?" As she handed it over, I felt the gravity of the moment settle around us, an unspoken conversation brewing in the stillness. This book could hold answers to the echoes of pain and confusion that had shadowed our lives. I flipped through the pages hastily, hoping for clarity, when suddenly, a note slipped out, fluttering to the floor like a fallen leaf. Mom and I shared a startled look as I bent to pick it up, consumed by the urgency within my chest. The note was addressed to me, written in a familiar scrawl that made my breath hitch. It read, "You don't know everything. Find the truth, but be cautious of the answers. Some secrets are best left buried." My heart sank. Who had written this? And more troubling, what truth lay hidden within the recesses of this house and our family? "Mom," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper, as the unease sank deeper, stretching the tension between us. Before I could continue, I heard Jake call out, his voice trembling, "Get in here. You all need to see this." With a mix of dread and curiosity, we rushed towards the source of Jake's voice, my heart racing with both anticipation and fear. What would we uncover next in this house of shadows? As the walls closed in around us, I shivered. One thing was certain: we were spiraling deeper into a truth that would irrevocably alter everything we thought we knew. The walls of the house seemed to lean in closer as we approached Jake, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken fears and secrets, like a silent witness to our family's unraveling. My pulse quickened, resonating like a drum as I wondered what revelation awaited us. Jake was standing in the room where our childhood memories had lingered like ghosts, his eyes wide with shock. "You have to see this," he said, urgency suffusing his tone. He pointed towards a corner, and I felt my heart race with a mixture of dread and curiosity. What stood before us was an old wooden box, its surface worn and cracked with age. Dust settled on it, as if it had been left to rest for eons, untouched and forgotten, much like the feelings that lay beneath the surface of our family. I glanced at Mom, who looked visibly shaken. Her face had paled, and I could see the wheels of memory turning in her mind, each tick echoing with pain. This place still bore scars from our past. "Should we open it?" Jake asked, his childish curiosity fighting against the weight of the moment. Mom hesitated, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not ours anymore. We should respect the past, even if it hurts us," she whispered, the tremor in her voice betraying her. "But it could have answers," I countered gently, feeling a fierce need to unearth whatever lay hidden there. "We need to know what really happened. How can we move forward without understanding our past?" With a sigh, Mom finally nodded, her resolve crumbling against the weight of inquiry. "All right," she conceded, stepping closer. "But we must be prepared for anything." As Jake and I knelt beside the box, the tension thickened, curling around us like a vine ready to strangle. My fingers brushed against the latch, light but decidedly trepidatious. A moment of hesitation passed among oscillant questions swirling through my head. Did we truly want to invite whatever horrors might lurk within? I released the latch, and the lid creaked open, revealing a collection of old photographs, trinkets, and letters, each piece a fragment of a life we barely understood. My breath hitched as I glimpsed familiar faces captured in time, smiling, carefree snapshots that sent rivulets of nostalgia and sorrow tearing through my chest. But amidst the photographs, a folded letter caught my eye, its edges frayed, yellowed with age. I reached for it, compelled by an unseen force. As I unfolded the paper, the handwriting felt hauntingly familiar, like a distant echo of lessons lost. "This is from Dad," I murmured, recognition coursing through me. I began to read aloud, my voice trembling as the words revealed a raw exposé of regret. The pain we carried became a weight too heavy. I failed to protect my family from truths that would have shattered us if revealed. My voice faltered, the realization clawing at my throat. I could feel Mom's tension spike as she stepped closer, wrapping her arms around herself as if seeking comfort against a storm. "What does it say? Is he referring to?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Suddenly, Jake interrupted, his eyes darting as he examined the other letters strewn about the box. "Wait, there's more." His face lit up with a mixture of hope and fear as he held up another envelope, distinctively marked. "Open it, Jake," I urged, my heart pounding in synchronization with the sundering silence that pressed upon us. With trembling hands, he tore it open and pulled out yet another note. But this one was different. It was crudely scribbled, a stark contrast to Dad's elegant handwriting. "You think you know, but you don't," Jake read aloud, confusion lacing his features. "Think before you act. Secrets can turn against you." An air of trepidation enveloped us, heavy with implications of undisclosed truths. "What does that mean?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribcage. The echoes of our family history seemed to drown us, deepening the chasm of uncertainty that had begun to form between us. Mom turned to us, her expression a tempest of emotions: fear, anger, and a painful yearning to address our family tragedy. "We need to dig deeper. These notes, they're not just letters. They're pieces of a larger puzzle. We can't shy away from the truth, no matter how dark," she said, her voice steadier than before, as if a newfound determination ignited within her. As we shared anxious glances, the darkness around us thickened, intertwining with the air we breathed. We poised on the edge of discovery. This could either be the key to healing or the catalyst for unraveling everything we held dear. Just then, an unrelated sound rang through the house, reverberating from the second floor, a soft, almost plaintive whisper echoing through the shadows. We froze, the air suddenly heavy with tension. Was I imagining things? Or was there truly someone else here? A chill crept up my spine, and in that moment, I knew whatever we sought to uncover, it was about to become undeniably more complex than we ever imagined. "What was that?" Jake breathed, and I could barely answer, my mind racing with confusion. "Let's go check," Mom said, steeling herself as she stepped forward, words spoken with fierce resolve even as panic simmered just beneath the surface. We made our way cautiously up the stairs, gripping each railing as if it held the weight of the world. Every step echoed, a reminder that we were not merely revisiting our past. We were diving headfirst into a reservoir of buried truths that could reshape our family forever. I swallowed hard, my heart racing at what awaited us. What secrets had been summoned by the unearthing of long-ignored pain. We were barreling towards the unknown, and with each passing moment, I feared not just for our present, but for the fragile threads that still tethered our family together. As we stepped onto the second-floor landing, the air felt heavier, charged with an energy that sent ripples of trepidation through my body. The whisper, barely perceptible, echoed again, a sound like a soft plea wrapped in sorrow. I glanced at Jake. He was moving closer to Mom, his small stature bringing a certain fragility to our gathering. A third will balancing on the brink of an emotional cliff. "What if it's a ghost?" he murmured, his eyes wide, a mixture of fear and childlike wonder blooming on his face. Mom stifled a laugh, but her eyes were haunted, flitting nervously between the closed doors lining the hallway. "Stop it, Jake," she said, though her smile lacked any real humor. "We're not here to entertain fantasies who need to stay grounded." With every footstep, the floorboards creaked beneath us like whispers from the past, and we approached the lone door at the end of the hall. It stood ajar, a thin slice of darkness beyond, inviting yet threatening. The whisper came again, stronger this time, wrapping around us like a chill. "What if it's him?" I found my voice, but the thought of Dad sent a shiver through me. "What if he's somehow come back?" "No," Mom responded sharply, the denial tumbling out before she could temper it. "If it were him, we would know." There was a fragility in her tone, a threadbare veil barely holding back the flood of repressed emotions roiling within. We exchanged apprehensive looks, and Mom pushed the door open to reveal a cramped room emanating an air of abandonment. Dust motes floated lazily in the dim light, settling on tattered remnants of old furniture. And then we saw Ida figures sitting in the corner, their silhouette framed against the ethereal light filtering in from the window. Every nerve in my body shouted for retreat as we instinctively recoiled. The figure jerked its head toward us, catching the light just enough to reveal familiar features marred by shadows and a long disheveled appearance. It was a face that had haunted our childhood, one that brought comfort and pain in equal measure. "Dad?" The name slipped out as a whisper, laced with disbelief. His gaze bore into mine, hollow and bewildered, as if he were just as lost as we felt. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, his voice a broken melody that shattered the fragile fabric of reality. "I told you to leave the past undisturbed." "What are you doing here?" Mom whispered, her voice cracking. The tears that had remained dammed in her eyes now threatened to break free. "I had to know if you would find the truth," he replied, each word elastically stretching the tension in the room. "What's buried is not just pain. It's the remnants of my choices, and those choices have consequences." "Are you saying that you—" I began, but the words fell flat upon hitting the weight of his gaze. "Caught between two worlds," he murmured. "You felt it, didn't you? The borders shifted after I left, the walls grew taller, and the secrets took root. You needed closure, but not at this cost." Anger flared within me at his casual admission, but my heart ached with understanding. "You didn't have to leave us. You could have fought for us. Sometimes leaving is the only way to protect what you love," he replied, his voice tinged with a sorrow that echoed through the years. "But I see now that love itself can become a prison." That I recoiled from his words, upset at the thought of love as a weapon twisted by pain, but curiosity anchored me. "Why now? Why return?" "Because the past can't stay buried forever." I was drawn back. The box, the letters, they brought me here. His confession hung heavy like fog, bewildering and vivid, and the whispers of secrets long withheld began to fill the room anew. Mom took a shaky step forward, courage blooming amidst despair. "What do you know, Dad? What are we missing?" His eyes glinted with a recognition that showed he knew more than he was revealing. "There's something you need to find, something vital buried under the weight of those letters. You must be prepared to face it, or it will consume you all. There's a reason some doors stay closed." But he never finished his thought. Instead, his gaze darted behind me, and I felt a presence, a dark heaviness that pushed against us from the hallway. Footsteps thundered from below, a cacophony that pulled us into the moment of disbelief. "Who else is here?" Jake squeaked in terror, now drawing even closer to him in an effort to keep chaos at bay. Mom turned sharply. "What is happening? We need to stand together." "I never meant for this to happen." Dad's voice was raw, frantic, but before he could say more, the sound of the front door violently swinging open echoed through the house. I felt a surge of panic as I turned toward the source of the noise. Shadows moved, figures bursting into the house from the stormy night outside. There were unfamiliar faces, each cloaked in darkness, dread capturing my throat. "Wait." I cried, panic clawing at my heart. Who are you? What do you want? They were strangers. Yet there was something about them that felt hauntingly familiar, lost threads reconnecting in a tapestry frayed by time. Dad's expression shifted, a stark jolt of recognition flickering in his eyes. Oh no, not now, his voice trembled as he stepped closer. Eyes locked onto the intruders as if he had been anticipating their arrival. Suddenly, everything splintered into chaos. Tension snapped like a string pulled too tight, and I understood with chilling clarity that not even the bonds of family could shield us from the impending storm. We were about to step into a tempest of truths that could shatter everything we believed. The emotional cliff we stood upon loomed larger than ever, and the fear of what might unravel pushed the fragile seams of our existence to the edge. The door slammed open with a force so violent it rattled the very foundation of our living nightmare. Unfamiliar figures eclipsed the dim light in the hallway, shadows spilling into our fragile sanctuary like a harbinger of chaos. My heart raced, each beat drumming a frantic rhythm of panic and disbelief. Who were they? What did they want from us? In that moment of bewilderment, I felt my dad's presence beside me, his expression shifting from shock to fierce protectiveness. Get behind me, he urged, his voice thick with urgency. I hesitated, instinctively wanting to stand firm with my family, but I could feel the gravity of his command tugging me closer to him. The looming intruders wore expressions void of warmth. Their eyes gleamed with a chilling certainty as they surveyed us, lingering on my dad's worn features. You should have kept your distance, Jacob, one of them spoke, his voice low but dripping with malice. Now you've led them here. What are you talking about? I cried out, stepping forward to defend my father, desperate to reclaim some sense of agency in a scenario spiraling out of control. Who are you? Those choices you thought were buried there still haunting us. Another stranger revealed, their gaze piercing deep into my soul. And now, the past is resurfacing. A surge of panic swept over me. I glanced at Mom and Jake, their expressions a mirror of confusion and dread. What does he mean? Mom whispered, her vulnerability resurfacing as she clutched the leather-bound book to her chest, seeking comfort in its weight. The men exchanged glances. There was recognition and something darker flickering between them, a sinister understanding that ignited a fire in my veins. You've opened doors that should have remained locked, the first man declared, his tone laced with looming threat. The truths you unearth are not ours alone. They belong to those who would rather see them stay buried. Turning my attention back to Dad, I forced every ounce of courage into my voice. Dad, please, what's going on? You have to tell us the truth. He stepped closer to us, rage and anguish mixing in his eyes. You shouldn't have come. This was a mistake, he murmured, regret coloring his every word. As if he knew the road we were about to navigate was fraught with danger. In an instant, Jake's small hand gripped my arm. What do they want? His voice trembled, betrayal flickering in his wide eyes. Is this about the past? Are they going to hurt us? I won't let them, Dad shouted, the protectiveness surging forth and intertwining with a fierce desire to shield us from whatever unknown threats loomed in the shadows. But the figures continued to advance, an impenetrable wall of menace, their movements leaving an echoing silence in their wake. Empathy mixed with fear as I realized they had an authority over the dark secrets that haunted our shared past. We have to know, I pleaded with Dad, desperation curling around my throat. We have to confront them to reclaim our truth. You owe us that. The atmosphere in the room shifted, a dense fog crashing against our collective resolve. My father faltered, uncertainty blinking across his face like a beacon of unresolved emotion. Sometimes knowing the truth only exposes us to deeper pain, he warned, his gaze drifting toward the open doorway through which the men advanced. Suddenly, the air turned electric, charged with a force that sent every hair on my skin standing on end. Before anyone could react, one of the shadowy figures lunged forward, reaching toward Dad. But it wasn't him that they were calling forth. You don't have to suffer anymore. We know what you've done. Before logic could catch up, agony surged through me. Each word wrestled against secrets that had gradually unraveled, all spiraling toward this very moment. Layers peeled away, revealing thoughts buried beneath my desire for family unity. "Dad, what did you do?" I whispered, horror gutting me. "They want you to face it, Jacob. Your choices affected everyone." Another figure hissed, closing the gap and drawing sharply into the space that felt suffocating. "You know what? You chose. You just need to admit it." I shouted, a visceral scream bursting forward as tears streamed freely down my face. I couldn't bear the thought of my father entwined in some dark narrative that spooled from choices made long ago. Choices that could now rip apart what little remained of our fragile bond. "This isn't the end. We can work through this." In the spiral of escalating sentiment, the room crackled with a weight that drew us collectively toward the truth. My heart raced, eyes darting as I took in our surroundings, the space becoming a distorted mirror, reflecting our fears, losses, and the desperate need for understanding. Still grasping onto whatever fragments of courage I had left, I stepped closer to Dad, feeling the pull of family binding us amidst the chaos. "Please, if there's something we need to know, just tell us," I cried, determination fueling the heartfelt plea. His gaze moved between us, frantic yet yearning surrender that ripped through my heart. "There's so much buried secrets entwined with love and loss, held hostage by choices I regret," he cried, each word a sliver of his anguish escaping into the room. "The past doesn't only belong to me, it belongs to us all. And now, you must choose which path to take." The shadows morphed and twisted, seeming to pulse with life as voices filled the air, each echoing the burdens we carried that had remained locked in time. Something was awakening inside me. It felt like a dormant fury fighting for resurgence, desperate for acknowledgement. "Enough!" I shouted to the figures, the urgency of my voice shaking the walls around me. "We're here to rewrite our story, not let it be dictated by what was. We're not scared anymore. We can confront these shadows together, as a family." As the air reverberated with the rawness of my conviction, something shifted, not just within me but among all of us, fractured hearts trembling at the edge of possibility. Silence fell heavily for a fleeting moment, and as it wrapped around us, I understood this was our moment of truth. A chance to breathe life back into what had once flickered in the dark. The shadows flickered behind us, tension shifting, and for the first time, we were presented with a union forged through the embrace of pain and vulnerability in unison. Our family stood resolute against the threshold of shadows threatening to swallow us whole. Together, we faced the shadows, bound by an unbreakable resolve that had ignited from the ashes of our silence. And as the room became dense with the promise of acceptance and understanding, I felt the long-buried ache within us transform into a glimmer of hope, a vow to carry forth the lessons of the past while rewriting our future. With steady breaths, we met each gaze, and in that shared moment, we were reminded that through even the darkest nights, love had the power to seep through as a lifeline to guide us toward tomorrow, and in that fragile peace, where our truths intertwined, I finally understood. Forgiveness was not just an act, but a choice, one that stitched tales of then and now into a powerful legacy that belonged to our resilient hearts. This was not the end. It was merely the beginning of our story, a story we would tell together. In walking through our shadows, we find the light we never thought we'd see, I whispered, the words echoing like an incantation as I held on to hope that sometimes the redemption lies not in forgetting, but in embracing all that we've been.